Hi, and welcome to our video review for Jak and Daxter, the Precursor legacy for the PlayStation 2. Now, this game was developed by Naughty Dog, and if you remember, Naughty Dog is the creators of Crash Bandicoot, but after they were done with the PlayStation, they decided that they'd rather strike out on their own and start a new franchise, and Jak and Daxter is the result. If you remember correctly, the Crash games were technically 3D, they were built out of polygons, but you weren't actually able to venture out into the worlds and go wherever you wanted to go. The game basically played on a track. Well, Jak and Daxter is Naughty Dog's first true 3D free-roaming game, and I believe they've done a really good job with it for their first effort. As the story goes in Jak and Daxter, the pair are actually two good friends, and then an accident happens, and Daxter falls into a pool of a magical liquid called Dark Eco. The Dark Eco then transforms Daxter into an orange muskrat. Jak kind of had some fault in the whole accident. He feels a bit guilty, so he decides to strike out and try to find a way to bring Daxter back to his human self, and that's where the game sets off. Similar to Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie, Jak and Daxter is a free-roaming 3D platformer, and with that comes a lot of platform jumping and, unfortunately, a lot of item collecting. A lot of people who may be down in the 3D platforming genre because you have to collect a lot of items, they're likely not going to have their mind changed by Jak and Daxter because there is a lot of collecting to be done. The primary item that you want to collect is the Power Cell, and similar to the stars in Super Mario 64 or Jiggies in Banjo-Kazooie, the Power Cell is awarded to you after you perform monumental tasks in the game, such as defeating a boss or making it all the way to the top of a gauntlet worth of jumps or whatever. The Power Cells are used to unlock new areas of the game, and they're also used to power up vehicles in the game that will actually take you to those new sections. So they're definitely the most important thing to collect. The second most important thing to collect is a Precursor orb, and what they are is a kind of a pink-colored egg-shaped object. And they're scattered all over the place in all the levels in the game. While they don't really serve too much of a primary purpose, they're kind of like the coins in Super Mario 64, you actually end up using the Precursor orbs a lot to trade with characters in the game to get Power Cells. A lot of times they'll ask you, you could trade in like 90 of your Precursor orbs to get one Power Cell, so that's a lot of adventuring just to get one Power Cell. As I mentioned earlier, the Dark Eco is what turned Daxter into the muskrat, but in addition to the Dark Eco, there's several other kinds too that the pair will actually have to utilize to increase their attributes. The Red Eco, if you pick that up, it will actually increase their attack range and their attack rating so that you can clear out enemies if you need them. The Yellow Eco will actually give Jak the ability to shoot fireballs, and the fireballs will actually lock onto the enemies and they'll kind of soar around and then they'll strike in on their target. Blue Eco is used to give Jak and Daxter temporary increased abilities, like they can run a little faster, and also if you have charged yourself up with some Blue Eco, you can step on certain platforms in the game and it'll actually activate those platforms. So the Blue Eco is used to actually give them increased abilities or to open up new portions of the level. One kind of drawback to the game that I kind of found was that you can't control Daxter. He just kind of hangs out on Jak's shoulder the whole time. And while he does react pretty coolly to however Jak is like jumping or attacking, you never really get a chance to control the muskrat. And hopefully that's something that Naughty Dog will look into putting in the sequel. One issue I had with the game was that there aren't a lot of moves for Jak and Daxter to perform when compared to his contemporaries. The spin attack from Crash Bandicoot games has actually made a return, and Jak will actually spin, and that's probably the attack that you'll use more than any other. But in addition to that, there's also other platforming staples like the butt stomp, and you have the double jump, and you have the long jump. And while there aren't that many moves compared to other games, it's kind of cool in that they force you to really master the moves in the game. It's a very gameplay intensive game, there's not a lot of downtime and there's a lot of action, so you really put those moves to use, and that's one thing that I really like about the game. But another slight issue is that every once in a while the game will just take away the ability to double jump. There are specific parts in the game where, say there's a chute and there's logs coming down the chute. Well, all of a sudden you just can't perform the double jump, it only allows you to jump once. And while it's not a problem and it doesn't really make the game hard, it would have been nice if there was some kind of designation to let you know that that was taking place, so that you know that you can't double jump if you were to try to. In addition to controlling Jak, there's also two other vehicles in the game. One is a It's kind of a hovercraft type vehicle with a propeller on the front of it, and it's only used sparingly. There's a couple levels where you use it pretty much to clear out the entire level, but for the most part it's just used to transport yourself from one level to the next. At first, when you get a hold of the hovercraft, it takes a little while to get used to, but after a while you'll be zipping around like it's no problem. Another vehicle that you can jump onto, well, I guess it's more of like an animal, is a strange looking bird creature that you can hop on, and this bird will actually help you reach areas that you couldn't on your own with just Jak and Daxter. So that's kind of cool, but at the same time, they don't really provide a lot of depth that you would get if you had, say, completely new playable characters. If you're a fan of 3D platformers, then you know that the most important thing to the game is good level design. I'd have to say that for a first free-roaming 3D game from Naughty Dog, they've done a pretty good job designing the levels. My only gripe would be that there aren't any warp points within the levels, and considering how huge they are, that can be a major pain in the butt. There's a lot of times where you'll climb all the way to the top of a huge structure, and you'll make one slip and you'll fall all the way down. And even though you may have cleared out everything leading up to that point, you just can't like jump in a warp and head back up there. You're gonna have to run the whole gauntlet again. Considering the difficulty of the game, and there are some sections of the game where you'll die a lot, the levels themselves have tons of platforms as you might expect, and I found the control to be dead on. I was able to, after a couple hours of play anyway, jump to virtually anywhere I thought I should go without a second thought. And that's definitely the sign of some good control in the game. And as you know, in 3D platformers, a crappy jump interface can ruin the whole game, and this isn't the case with Jak and Daxter. As far as graphics are concerned, Jak and Daxter is by far one of the most impressive PlayStation 2 games available. The thing that'll strike you first is the draw distance. It's amazing. You can literally see for miles. You can actually see the other levels in the game. So it's like the whole world is tied together into one massive level. And there's no loading times in the game either. So if you go from one section to another, it just kind of flashes up the name of the new section on the screen, and then you go on your way, which is really cool for a PlayStation 2 game. This is definitely a technical feat that should be mentioned, so I thought I would mention it here in the video review. Second only to the draw distance is the animation in the game. And while there aren't a lot of moves in the game, the moves that are there look awesome. And the coolest thing about it is how Daxter hangs onto Jak's shoulder. If he jumps up into the air, like the physics for the muskrat look awesome, the way he tries to hang on. And another cool thing is sometimes when you grab a power cell, or actually every time you grab a power cell, there's a little animation bit that goes on, and Daxter will jump off of Jak's shoulder, he'll do some footwork and do a windmill into a backspin. Sometimes he'll just come off the screen in the air, Jak will loft the power cell up to him, Daxter will grab it and dunk it in his backpack. And there's probably well over a dozen, maybe even 20 different animations like this that they really make, add the little nice touches that make the game really cool. The one graphical issue I would like to touch on is the frame rates. In the early going of the game, there's some hub levels that draw a lot of polygons at once, and the game does have a tendency to stutter here. Fortunately, like I said, it wasn't in any of the in-game levels, so it doesn't really necessarily affect the gameplay per se. But there are times where the game definitely gets really shaky. But I really wouldn't want to take too much away from the graphics score for this because, like I said, it doesn't really happen while you're playing the game or performing any of the dangerous platform jumps in the game. I'd have to say Jak and Daxter is a great start for Naughty Dog on the PlayStation 2. It's not overly original, and it definitely borrows a lot from some of the other 3D platformers on the market. But at the same time, the action elements in the game are a lot more intense than other 3D platformers. The collecting isn't too god-awful for people that aren't into that type of thing. The graphics are sick. The sound is awesome. So if you have a PlayStation 2 and you're into platforming games, rush right out and buy this game right now.